And in order to move in this direction, you have to understand a little bit about Jah's numbers, especially the numbers 1 and 7. And because the Feast of Trumpets, occurs on the first day of the 7th month, called Ethanim, it's very vital to know these numbers. The meaning of this festival encompasses both the prophetic and symbolic meanings of the numbers 1 and 7. The symbolic meaning of the number 1 is unity and primacy, or being first, numero uno. And the number 7 is symbolically and prophetically a number of termination, completeness, absolute, or divine perfection, finality, and bringing to an end, just like the 7-day week, the 7,000-year cycle. And it's no accident Jah placed the Feast of Trumpets 14 days before the beginning of the celebration of the end of the great fall harvest called Tabernacles. The fall harvest prophetically celebrates the end of the spiritual harvest of humanity as we get to be ushered into Jah's millennial reign and his new kingdom. So again, reminding ourselves and taking a look here, right? Where we are. This is the 14-day period in between. Again, 14 days, very unique with the 7s. I noticed that your mic is off, D. Did you do that purposely? Oh, okay, no problem. So again, most of these Old Testament stories are dramatized prophecies for our time. They were staged by Jah to inform the entire universe of what he's planning to do in the last days of Earth's history. The Apostle Shaul, or Saul, or Paul writes these.
1 Corinthians 10, verse 11. Now all these things happen unto them for examples, and they are written for admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come.
That's right. So now let's look at some of those prophetic dramas, those shadows of coming events, and see what we can learn from them. One of the prime foreshadows of the Feast of Trumpets is found in the story of when Joshua, son of Nun, and the Israelites conquered Jericho. Now, I want to say this. There's great similarities between Joshua, son of Nun, and Joshua, son of Jah. First of all, they share the same name. And this is very well known in the English-speaking world, although in the so-called Hebraic-speaking world, it would be Yahshua or Yahawashi for Yahawashi, son of Nun, and Yahawashi, son of Yah, that way. But they share the same name, and this name means salvation. And especially when it comes to the understanding of what this word Hosea, which was Joshua's, son of Nun's first name, that before he was named Jehoshua by Moses, it means salvation, deliverance, and saving. And that's what the name Joshua or Jehoshua that we use means. Jah's salvation, or Jah's, the salvation of Jah, if you want to turn it around that way.
That's right.
So I want to show this video to the book of Joshua before we read it, so we can just set the tone and we can know, the setup as we start to read this. So turn up your speaker, and I'm going to give you this 3-minute video just to kind of give an overview. It's going to give an overview of what we're getting to with Joshua and Jericho, and just a little bit before. So let me play it without further ado.
The book of Joshua. Let's back up and remember the story so far. So God chose Abraham, and then his family became the people of Israel, who are then enslaved down in Egypt. And so through Moses, God rescued Israel out of Egypt. He made a covenant with them at Mount Sinai, and he brought them through the wilderness. So Israel then camped outside the promised land, and Moses called them to obey God's commands so that they could show all the other nations what God is like. The book of Joshua picks up right after Moses has died, and Israel's ready to enter the land. So the story of Joshua is designed with 4 main movements. Joshua first leads Israel into the promised land, and then once they're there, they meet all this hostility from the Canaanites, and so they engage them in battle. Then after their victories, Joshua divides up the promised land as the inheritance for the 12 tribes, and then the book concludes with these final speeches that Joshua gives to the people. So let's dive in and we'll see how all of it flows together. The first section begins with Moses' death, and Joshua is appointed as Israel's new leader. And the author intentionally presents Joshua as a new Moses. So like Moses, Joshua calls the people to obey the Torah, which means the covenant commands that they were given at Mount Sinai. And then Joshua sends spies into the land, just as Moses did back in Numbers chapters 13 and 14, except it goes way better this time. In fact, even some Canaanites turn and follow the God of Israel. Joshua then leads all Israel across the Jordan River and into the land. Just like the sea parted for Moses in the Exodus, so here the River Jordan parts and the priests carry the Ark of the Covenant across, leading all Israel with them. Now, in chapter 5, the story transitions, so that the people look back to their roots as God's covenant people, and so the new generation is circumcised and they celebrate their first Passover in the land. But then they turn and prepare to go forward. And Joshua has this crazy encounter with a mysterious warrior, who, it turns out, is the angelic commander of God's army. And Joshua asks, "Are you for us or are you for our enemies?" And the warrior responds, "Neither." Which shows that the real question here is whether Joshua is on God's side. It makes clear that this whole story is not about Israel versus the Canaanites. Rather, this is God's battle, and Israel is going to play the role of spectators or sometimes supporters in God's plan, which leads to the next section. We find stories about all these conflicts that Israel had with different Canaanite groups. And the first part retells the story of 2 battles in detail, and that's followed by a series of short stories that condense years of battles into a few brief summaries. So the first 2 battles are against Jericho and then Ai, and they offer these contrasting portraits of God's faithfulness versus Israel's failure. At Jericho, Israel is to take a completely passive approach. So they let God's presence in the ark lead them around the city to music for 6 days. And just like Rahab turned to the God of Israel, maybe the people of Jericho would do the same, but they don't. And so on the 7th day, the priests blow the trumpets and the walls come falling down, leading Israel to victory. The point of the story is that God is the one who will deliver his people. Israel simply needs to trust and wait. Now, the next story of the battle, the book of Joshua.
Yes, D. What do you think about that one there, D?
That's nice. It's a good a short but good I guess summary. If one was prepared to read Joshua, that's great to help prepare you to understand what's going on.
That's right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get right into the read, okay?
All right.
There we go, D. The fall of Jericho. Open up your books, follow along, and let's get some understanding.
Joshua 5 verse 12. And the manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten of the old corn of the land. Neither had the children of Israel manna any more, but they did eat of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. And it came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there stood a man over against him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went unto him and said unto him, Art thou for us or for our adversaries?
Now, I just want to kind of step in here for a quick sec. As you can see that there's another man here. And this is where I don't call it, but this is where Joshua meets Joshua. A lot of people don't know that this is Jehoshua, the Messiah, our Savior, before he came to earth through Miriam. Joshua was in the Old Testament many times. You see, the thing is, no man has seen the Father, God, or El at any time. So anytime you read anything in the Old Testament, it says, and they saw God, or they saw El, or there was some kind of mysteriousness, know that it would be the Messiah. And we can see that it's the Messiah here. It was the Messiah in the burning bush, even though it says like the angel, but it's when you start to have a good understanding that spoke to Moses, it was Jehoshua, the Most High. And also you're going to see here again, this is the captain of the host, Joshua, our Savior.
Verse 14. And he said, Nay, no, But as captain of the host of Jah am I now come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth, and did worship, and said unto him, What saith my master unto his servant?
So you see how the captain of the host, he's the captain of the host of Jah, right?
Hmm.
And so as well, you can see that he says nay. So it's almost like Jah, when he's moving with us, we want him to move our way, but sometimes he might not be on our side or the other side. He's just on the righteous side. You understand?
Right.
Doing what he has to do. But we know that whatever Jah's will is his will. So he calls him master, and he does worship by bowing down. And look at here what this captain of the host says.
And the captain of Jah's host said unto Joshua, Loose thy shoe from off thy foot, for the place whereon thou standest is holy. And Joshua did so.
So this is again in the presence of the Most High Joshua. When I say Most High Joshua, Jah is the Father, the Most High, and Joshua the Messiah is the Son of the Most High, but he can bear any title as well. And again, he had to remove his shoes, his sandals, because he was in the presence of holiness. And this is how we know who this is. And although many people say, it might have been Michael or Gabriel, there's great understanding that I found that this is the Messiah. But let's continue.
Joshua 6, verse 1. Now Jericho was straitly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out, and none came in. And Jah said unto Joshua, See, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of valor.
All right. So now we're getting an understanding. So remember, the captain of the host said, remove your shoes, it's holy. And that was the end of Joshua chapter 5, verse 15. It's a very short chapter. And we're just reading in a sequential or chronological order, not skipping over everything. But you notice the conversation is continuing now, because Joshua son of Nun met the captain of the host. And now we're getting to see what this conversation was. But notice it says, and Jah said, or what? The Lord said unto Joshua. So we giving an understanding that this is Joshua the Messiah speaking to Joshua son of Nun.
Right. Verse 3. And ye shall compass the city, all ye men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns. And the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when ye hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up every man straight before him. And Joshua the son of Nun called the priests, and said unto them, Take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of Jah.
All right. So what we see here is great talk about sevens, and that's why I try to say, Jah's number 7 is a very important number of wisdom and perfection. So you see, every day for one time, they do it one time, and then on the Sabbath day, the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, which would be today, they started 6 days ago, they went into this conquering of Jericho. Now, some people might say, but man, I thought we're not supposed to work or do certain things on the Sabbath. Well, this is a time of war. And you can see even when they went in there, it's almost like Jah did most of the work for them. They didn't have to break down any walls. All they had to go and do is slay and capture things. So we have 7 ram's horns. We have 7 priests bearing these trumpets. We have the Ark of Jah going around once. And it takes a little bit of a while to go around the city. I would say at least 1 to 2 hours, and I'll even give it to, hour and a half or so for all the people to go around. So when we look at this occurred during the 6th month, which was last month, and it occurred on this day here, right? This day here, the 26th. So they went around it, once on the 26th, the first day of the week. 2nd day of the week went once. They went once. The 6th day they went once. And then on the 7th day, you can see it says Ethanim 1, the 7th month, the Feast of Trumpets. This is when they did 7 circles of that city Jericho. Now, I'll even say this, if it did take an hour or two, and let's even say it took 2 hours or so, when you went around that, city 7 times, the day was carrying on. So even probably by the time that the walls were falling was probably near the evening time as well, that way.
Hmm.
But nonetheless, again, this is our 7 days of marching, and you can see how it coincides with Jah's calendar, his almanac, perfectly. So again, the priests going around, and sorry for some of these images. It's hard to find, you know, the proper images for the depiction of our people, but you could use your imagination. Continuing.
Joshua 6, verse 7. And he said unto the people, Pass on and compass the city, and let him that is armed pass on before the ark of Jah. And it came to pass, when Joshua had spoken unto the people, that the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns passed on before Jah, and blew with the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of Jah followed them. And the armed men went before the priests that blew with the trumpets, and the rearward came after the ark, the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. And Joshua had commanded the people, saying, Ye shall not shout, nor make any noise with your voice, neither shall any word proceed out of your mouth, until the day I bid you shout, then shall ye shout.
So yeah, this is quite unique. They were not supposed to say a word, right? Be silent. You wouldn't want to be the one to break that silence. Who knows if there would have been anything, but they were commanded not even to make shall any word come out of their mouth.
Not even a whisper.
That's right. And I remember something in Revelation. I remember reading between the 6th and 7th seal, there is a time period of silence for half an hour before the 7th seal is opened, which has the 7 trumpets in it as well.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of a connection here with this silence here before the actual crumbling of the wall and before they shout.
Verse 11. So the ark of Jah compassed the city, going about it once, and they came into the camp and lodged in the camp. And Joshua rose early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of Jah.
All right, so they're doing this in the mornings, right? And then coming back in by the evening, or it could even be sometime in the daytime. But every morning they're beginning this journey. So again, these city walls were quite high. You couldn't climb up them. Even if you try to get ladders, you wouldn't find ladders that were high enough. It was a very fortified city. And I don't know if a lot of people know, but Jericho, even though it's a silly thing, but historically, Jericho is known as the oldest city in the world, that way. Because it was even though Jerusalem was, obviously on the scene, but it wasn't conquered by the Israelites at that time. It was run by the Canaanites, and in particular the Jebusites, that way. So Jericho is known as one of the oldest cities, and you can even probably find some things online where people are saying, hey, here's some ancient ruins. I don't know about all of that. But nonetheless, again, this is what the Israelites did. All the people, the priests, all the people, the men of war, the children, everyone